who was cast only a few days before filming began and then had to pack up her life in LA overnight? Which actress had to lie to family and friends about where she really was? And what was the one request that Sam Heughan dreads being asked in auditions? Hi, I'm Janet, and you're watching OSSA. Lights, camera, romance. Caitriona Balfe. This leading lady might never have graced our screens if she wasn't so headstrong. Now that would have been a travesty. Growing up in a small Irish community, Caitriona considered acting from an early age. After school, she even traveled to Dublin to study theater. But then she received an offer to model. Even though it wasn't really her passion, who turns down a trip to Paris? So, for 10 years, she modeled for the likes of Victoria's Secret and Dolce & Gabbana, until one day, when she realized her life was missing something. She made a bold move, left modeling, and took up acting classes again. I started from scratch. I didn't have any managers. I didn't know any agents. I hadn't acted in almost a decade. And then came Outlander. About the casting process, executive producer Ronald D. Moore's initial plans turned out to be way off. How so? He'd originally thought that casting the role of the leading lady Claire would be a breeze. It was the part of Jamie he thought would be the tall task. But then, exactly the opposite happened. The producers searched high and low for the perfect Claire. It turned out to be the great Scarlett O'Hara search. Can you imagine how stressed they must have been? There were only a few days left before filming, and they still hadn't found her. Hey, did you know that at the time it was reported that Grey's Anatomy star Katherine Heigl was seriously considered for the role of Claire? In 2010, the adaptation was planned as a film rather than a TV series. Then the producers thought of her as the leading lady. But can you imagine anyone but Caitriona as our time-traveling heroine? Skip forward to when Caitriona's self-made audition tape came in. Unsolicited, by the way. And finally, the search was almost over. Yes, before she could be cast, it all hinged on her chemistry test with Heughan, and we all know that went great. After they finished acting their scene, the team kept the cameras rolling just to see how they interacted with each other. See for yourself.
I lost my ring during that as well.
Did you?
Yeah, it went under the chair.
I think when you grabbed my hand and I punched you in the face, I was like, sorry.
That was good.
About the day of her chemistry test, Balfe admitted to running a bit late, which made her even more nervous. But she remembers how Sam made a very thoughtful gesture. Sam was just standing there, being very cool and calm. He handed me some tissues to wipe the sweat off my brow. Once we cast her, she was on a plane to Scotland within a day, and shooting 2 days later, Moore said. Tobias Menzies. Let's put it to a vote. Is there even a more versatile actor out there? Many viewers would agree that Tobias didn't get enough credit for his dual portrayal of Frank and Black Jack Randall. When he learned about the roles, Menzies was immediately up for the challenge. He told Backstage that what excited him the most about it was to play two characters with such a wide range of psychologies and emotions. About the job playing the villain, he explained that it's all about not being too extreme. According to him, how he holds himself and the costumes helped. His top secret for making the villain believable, though? It's to avoid crude physical indicators, like one has a limp and one doesn't, he joked. While we couldn't find his screen test online, it's apparent that it went great. I mean, he had many big roles in the bag before Outlander. Also, author Diana Gabaldon praised him in an interview with Outlander TV News, gushing about his incredible range. When Backstage asked him about his worst audition stories, he was quick to reply. I mean, God, I think there's so many. That's the truth about early on. It's 90% humiliation, isn't it? He recalled auditioning for Moulin Rouge, the role that Ewan McGregor ended up playing. It was just terrible and ridiculous, he laughs. Well, we're happy that his audition for Frank and Randall clearly went much better. Richard Rankin. When asked about his role, Rankin once told Paste magazine that he was really excited about playing Roger from day one. Rankin is one of the few cast members who was actually a big fan of the books going into the audition room. Also, the fact that when he applied, the casting process was quite long, meant he had more than enough time to research the part and get a good feel for the character. Before we get to a funny screen test story, you just have to know another secret. Before his acting days, Rankin was actually working in a bank and being groomed for a position in computer technology. At the time, he thought, if I was in IT, if I was in computers, you'd have stability in that. Sounds like a sensible choice. Probably. But then, something terrible happened. Want to hear what it is? He decided to become an actor. Almost had you there. The course of his career changed after a chance meeting with a group of strangers, all filmmakers, who told him he had a good look for an actor. Well, the rest is history. So now, have you heard about the tough day Richard had to endure while doing screen tests to find the right Brianna? Hint, it wasn't really tough. On one particular day, he had to cast with and kiss several beautiful girls, which led to Tony Graffia, executive producer and writer, sharing how they joked with him about what a tough day it would be. And he was like, yeah, it's gonna be really tough. I'm just gonna try and get through it. Sophie Skelton. On the day of Sophie Skelton's final Outlander audition, pretty much everything seemed to be going wrong. In an interview with Town and Country Mag, she said, "You know how people say bad things come in threes? Firstly, she caught a cold on her flight from the UK to LA. This left a horrible ringing sound in her ears. Secondly, her Uber driver got into an accident. The third one, even though everyone kept saying it never rains in LA, on that day, it was pouring down. She kept trying to convince herself that since nothing was going as planned, something right had to come out of it. Her positive thoughts seemed to have done the trick, since by the time she returned to the UK a few days later, she had the part." About the final audition itself, Sophie says she doesn't remember much, just that it was a chemistry test with Caitriona, who'd already been playing Claire for a while at that stage. Interesting, right? Not with Richard, as you might have thought. In any case, Skelton does remember that the audition felt natural. She found that unexpected, because in audition rooms, things rarely feel natural. Often when you do a take and it's a blur, that's when it's the best performance, because you're just in it, she said. But it was a totally different story before that. A year earlier, Skelton had her heart set on the role of Brianna. In preparation, she'd even called her local bookstore to ship the books overnight. So it's needless to say that she was down in the dumps when she heard nothing back after her first application, and had eventually forgotten about the role. Until the producers contacted her out of the blue, 12 months later. Turns out they weren't ignoring her. Instead, they'd merely decided not to bring Brianna into the story until a later season. Can you imagine her surprise? Once she was flown to Glasgow for filming, things got even more surreal. Why? Well, she had to keep it quiet for months. So she had to lie to both friends and family about why she was really in Glasgow. Tough situation, but we're sure they forgave her when they learned the real story. Oh, and about her and Richard's screen test, Sophie recalls him bringing chocolates for everyone at their camera test, and his first impression of her was that she was quite innocent and sweet. Sam Heughan. There can be no other king of men, right? But of course, other actors were also considered before Heughan was cast. As Diana told E! Online, Liam Neeson was one of the first contenders for the role. Say what? Yep, although this was years ago when the novels were pitched to be a feature film. So, that said, when it comes to this talented, and did I mention hot Scot? We're sure it didn't take long for Moore and the rest of the crew to spot him. Well, the answer is both yes and no. Yes, because it was only like 4 days into casting when they found their King of Men. When they viewed his audition tape, Moore's reaction was, "I watched the tape and was sure enough. I was like, oh my God, there he is. That's him. So let's grab him now." But it was almost a no when Sam's photos at the time nearly cost him a very important vote, that of Diana. At the time, Heughan hadn't been in many film roles, and his photos left a bit to be desired. She was driving when they sent her his audition, which is why the author told the rest of the team, "This man is grotesque. What are you thinking?" Of course, when she got off the road and Skyped with him, she was also sold by his charisma. She says 5 seconds into his tape, Sam was gone, and it was Jamie Fraser right there. In preparation for his audition, Heughan had to learn 21 pages of script over a weekend. And he also read the Outlander novel. Sounds like a tough job, but he was born for this role. But over to the answer you've been waiting for. Which one thing does Sam dread being asked in auditions? You'd never believe this is something he'd be worried about. In an interview with Backstage, he bared his secret. "I've been in many auditions thinking, God, do I have to take my shirt off? It's quite a physical role. It's quite exposing, actually." But no, the Outlander producers didn't ask. And at the time, I was keeping quite fit, so it was all right. Over to you. Would you have watched Outlander if Caitriona and Sam weren't in it? And which other audition stories surprised you? We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Thanks for watching, and stay awesome!